Severin Films specializes in Blu-rays and Blu-ray collections of some of the best forgotten cinema. Horror, foreign, exploitation, and shot-on-video movies with great collectible packaging and each disc jammed with extra features, commentaries, and behind-the-scenes features, including interviews with the cast and crews, and so much more. Keep physical media alive by visiting www.severinfilms.com. That's www.severinfilms.com, and let them know your friend Michael at the Shameless Picture Show sent you.
Warning! This movie podcast actually discusses movies. Be aware that it may discuss any of the following elements: endings, surprise twists, unexpected cameos, and all manner of spoilers. If this doesn't appeal to you, then why listen to a movie podcast? Without further ado, please enjoy our feature presentation, The Shameless Picture Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shameless Picture Show. I am your host, Michael Viers, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Ross Bigley. Ross Bigley is an award-winning filmmaker and the founder of the Milwaukee Short Film Festival, named Best Local Festival by Movie Maker magazine. He also serves as president of the Milwaukee Independent Film Society, and he's a graduate of the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. Bigley has exhibited artwork internationally, taught at both MIAD and Discovery World, and produced over 70 film and video projects through Dirty Job Films and Third Choice Ensemble. How are you doing today, Ross?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I hope this bio is up to date. I was kind of combing the internet looking for stuff.
Yeah, it's up to date. That sounds right.
All right. So, because when I first met you, it was through the Milwaukee Short Film Festival. It was probably you had programmed, I would say it was probably either From the Darkness. It was probably around the time that I did From the Darkness Theater and Love You Still with Milwaukee Film. And I think that was back when you were still at the Milwaukee Art Museum, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, we were at the Art Museum for a number of years till they changed their rental format. They wanted to use the space exclusively for weddings, so they kind of kicked us out of there.
That's well, I've got my own feelings about it, but I feel like it's a wasted opportunity because it was a really cool space. And yeah. One thing I have to say, I always really appreciate about your film festival, Ross, is you always, whenever I'd been involved with the film festival, whether I was showing a film or more recently doing panels for you, you always make the people involved feel very important. And that was one of my first film festivals I had probably gone to, especially locally. And I felt like a big deal walking into that room. And I've talked to filmmakers who have gone to the film festival since, and they feel the same way. And I always really thing I appreciate about your film festival is you have a lot of respect for the craft and the art of film and filmmaking.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I always wanted to try to put on the best shows I could.
Yeah, and I honestly think you've succeeded in that. How long has the Milwaukee Short Film Festival been going on for?
Started in 1994.
And why? Because one thing I always liked about you, Ross, is that you are a jack of all trades when it comes to film and the world of film and filmmaking. You're not exclusively a filmmaker. You're not exclusively a festival programmer. How did the Milwaukee Short Film Festival come to be?
Um, at one point, I was co-owner of an art gallery, and back then, if you wanted to see a collection of filmmakers' work in a space somewhere, they usually set up a projector in a coffee house.
Mm-hmm.
There really weren't film festivals except for probably Wisconsin. I think was starting, and the film festivals in town were like the French Film Festival, which is a niche one,
Mm-hmm.
or the LGBTQ Film Festival, which only shows LGBTQ films.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm not sure if the French Film Festival is still going on, but unfortunately, the LGBTQ Film Festival has stopped a few years ago. So I was trying to think of a way to to showcase work filmmakers on a broader scale, and I was a producer at MATA, Milwaukee Public Access, basically channel 14 and 47.
Oh, I remember Mata. That's actually kind of how I got started.
Yeah, and I thought, well, local basic cable could probably reach a wide audience. All I have to do is put up posters, and people can tune in to watch. Then that way, I'm not renting a space. And it was I spent nothing on those first three film festivals. I just sent out a thing saying, "Send us your films." I I just put them on tape. They showed on MATA, and just put some posters around town to tell people this is where you can watch the film festival. And I didn't do it yearly. I just did it whenever I felt like doing another one. So like the first 6 years, I just kind of like did it off and on. And then around 2004, I decided to do it annually, and I've been doing it annually since.
And did you? So, as I mentioned before, you are a jack of all trades when it comes to the world of film and filmmaking. Because I feel like a lot of young filmmakers, and then eventually filmmakers who've been doing it for a while, can attest it is not easy to make films. It's time consuming. It's expensive. You have to get a lot of people together. And while don't get me wrong, you could do the Sadie Benning thing and shoot some really interesting little beautiful pieces in your bedroom. There's most a lot of films require at least a couple people and a lot of time and a lot of dedication. Did you ever feel like being exposed to all these other films coming into your film festival inspired your own work and made you want to try even harder at the films that you were making?
Honestly, no. And I don't mean that in a bad way against the films that showed at my film festival, but I always had an idea of what type of films I always wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started on a path to do it that way. My film school, I didn't go to film school. I went to an art school to be a photographer and illustrator, and I used those tools to be a filmmaker: composition, the use of negative space, all that stuff, to be a filmmaker. And my film school was basically Video Visions. It was a wonderful video store that basically had everything. If I wanted to go learn about Truffaut as a filmmaker, I could rent every one of his films there,
Mm-hmm.
or Godard or Fellini or whatever, and Orson Welles. And that's how I decided to be a filmmaker.
It is fascinating the way that those old video stores would have an impact on people. I can directly credit the video store that I grew up with. It was a small little video store called Bucky's Super Video in
Where was that
Bayview.
located?
That one was located right off of Oklahoma and Bennett Avenue. So it's right before you get on to 794. And
Okay.
that was a very big video store for me, to the point that I actually ran into the owner recently at a hardware store, of all places, and got a chance to tell him myself just how important that video store was, because I don't think I would have become a filmmaker without it.
Yeah, there were film schools when I was going to college.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, NYU and UCLA and all that, but there weren't film departments except for maybe UWM in the area. And I already graduated my ed, and I just had it in my mind that I wasn't going back to school. I didn't want to spend all that kind of money again with student loans and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just studied, the great directors. There was another great video store right across the street from my ed downtown, Paradise Video. It was just as good as Video Visions.
So when you were discovering your love for film, like, what were some of you said you had a very strong idea of what the type of films you wanted to make. Who was inspiring you? Like, how would you describe the type of films that you wanted to make?
There was one director that I really gravitated towards, and that was Orson Welles. And when I was renting his films, he's more respected now than he
Mm-hmm.
was 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Because back then he was kind of known as the guy who did wine commercials and such, and
That's fair.
and he had his films in film and on video cassette. But now there's a lot more appreciation for who he is,
Yeah.
and I just found his work stunning. I loved it. Othello, I rented that a lot, and I read about it too. And the fact that one section was shot like maybe a year later and matched into something that, just piecing together things and getting just one shot here, one shot there, and just making it work, you know. Um, and that's a little bit how I worked in the beginning. I was my only crew. I had a camera, occasional lights set up, and I basically wrote ensembles. So an actor didn't have to be on set the whole time. And sometimes when that happens, one actor can't be with another, and I have to shoot their coverage. Then a couple weeks later, I have to shoot the other side, the reverse,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I really gravitated towards Orson Welles because of that, to figure out how he did that to make it work.
Yeah, and that was the thing that I always appreciate about Orson Welles is his films never, because a lot of his films had that run and gun quality to them, but they didn't look it. They always felt really classy, very elegant. And honestly, in my entire time studying film and studying the history of film, I've always found those types of stories to be far more endearing.
Yeah.
Like Ron Howard tells a story about making his movie Far and Away. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it or not, but
Yeah, I saw that when it came out.
and he is telling a story about how they're trying to get a very specific shot on, this Irish countryside, and they were losing the light, and they couldn't really get a company move fast enough up there. So he said he remembered his time working for Roger Corman and just essentially threw some gear at Tom Cruise, and they ran up that hill together, and he shot it himself with the camera. Didn't move the crew, didn't move anything. He just ran with a bounce and a light, and just big Hollywood film that has all the resources and all the money, and he's still doing what he has to do to get the shot. And I've always found that stuff to be very inspiring.
Yeah, it's. I think many filmmakers today need to realize or never forget their early work and how they had to make things work.
Mhm.
Nowadays, I think and this is not to denigrate Steven Spielberg, but I can't see him with his big machinery of a massive crew making something small again.
No, I think the closest thing I've seen that he did something like small was I think he was shooting a commercial for iPhone or something, and he shot the commercial himself on an iPhone. Like he didn't have his crew with him.
Really?
Yeah. And because like I'm right there with you. Like I've always I thought it was very endearing to hear like on something like Jurassic Park that he was doing camera op work on parts of that film because he likes to do it. He has all the budget in the world. He could just have a camera op come and do it, but he wants to still do it. And I don't know. I doubt he's still doing that because he's quite a bit older now. But I completely agree with you. And if I could transition back to your film festival, the Milwaukee Short Film Festival, it's one of the things I enjoy when I make it out to your film festival is seeing one, you show films from all over the world. And I can see, even if without knowing the stories, I feel like I can see those moments of people just doing whatever they have to do to get the shot.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in the films that I get and the films that I program. I try to do a lineup that you don't see elsewhere because a lot of film festivals in Wisconsin, particularly, kind of show a lot of the same short films around.
Yeah.
And I strive to show films an audience might not have seen yet, and give them a new experience.
Yeah, and I honestly feel like you accomplished that because there's not I can't think of another film festival that programs the type of films that you are showing. And last thing I wanted to ask you about before we move on to our actual topic tonight is what goes into programming a film festival and how do you balance your own personal taste versus trying to give the audience a worthwhile show?
Well, I try to keep my personal tastes out of it. I try to think of what the audience might like. Occasionally, that's hard to do
Mm-hmm.
because I will watch a film and go, "Oh, I think that's pretty good," and then I'll program it in. People might not like it as much, so I try not to program my personal tastes. Let that interfere in how I pick a film. But I watch all the films, and then I kind of start in about early to mid March. I begin really looking after I watch a whole chunk of them. I don't watch them as they come in because it could be one film and then a week later another film. And I'm trying to remember how one might play against another.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to do. I'd rather do it when a batch of films come in. And that's usually around deadline time. That's when you get the most films sent to you. So I watch a batch of films and I make some notes to say this one could work. It could be a good anchor film. And I try to find other films that complement it and find films that haven't been played to death. And that's hard to do in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of film because I'm in the fall.
Yeah.
A lot of films have been played to death by the time I would program it.
So when is the next Milwaukee Short Film Festival happening? Is it? I believe it's September. Is it not?
September 5th through 7th at the Avalon Theater.
And is there anything unique or special about this year that you'd want to like highlight or tip people off about?
We're 3 days this year. 2 blocks on Friday, 3 blocks on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. And Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival, I gave them the Sunday blocks.
Yes.
So they can continue on for another year. Amber does a really good job with her festival. You hosted one year, I believe.
Hosted 2 years actually.
Oh, okay. And I think it's an important festival to keep around. So I'm trying to help them stay around as long as they can.
Yeah, I was a big supporter of the Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival, and I was really tickled to see that you partnered with them because I'm just the same way as you. I wanted to see that film festival continue, and I think Amber is got a great mind for programming, and I'm glad to see that that film festival will get to go another year. And so yeah, I'm really excited for that. I think it's going to be a great year for the film festival, and I hope everyone makes it out because the Avalon's also a fantastic venue to see some short films. It's a really cool looking venue. It's one of Milwaukee's historic theaters, and that main room is kind of such an interesting room to see a theater in because you feel like you're outside while being inside because of
Yeah.
the illuminated starry ceiling.
Yeah. I think this is our fourth year there. I'm not entirely sure. Because I sometimes I forget about that COVID year. Uh,
Fair.
but yeah, this could be our fourth year there.
Well, that's fantastic, and I think anyone within the Wisconsin area, if you're listening to this and you've not gone to the Milwaukee Short Film Festival, um, definitely go and check it out. And are entries still open, or have they officially been closed?
They're closed at this
Okay.
time. We're recording in July. The website will be up hopefully in a few days. We're waiting on the technical people to finish that. And I would say 95% of our films are premieres, and probably about 80% of them are Wisconsin films.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I was pretty much complimenting you at the beginning, but I do want to say again that you've always been a huge supporter of local voices and giving people who may not get shown at other film festivals an opportunity to show their work. So it's another reason I wanted to have you on this episode because I wanted you to have a chance to talk about the Milwaukee Short Film Festival because it's a film festival that's near and dear to my heart.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. So, Ross, before we move on to our main topic, was there anything else you want to talk about with the Milwaukee Short Film Festival or yourself?
Well, I would like to reiterate that the Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival is the 7th. We gave them that day, and they are programming their own festival. They're showing 27 films that day, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was involved with 2 years of that film festival, and you're gonna see if those of you listening, you're gonna see some really interesting films, and I highly recommend you you if it, take a chance and give something unique a try because the whole mantra of the Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival is to illuminate underheard voices within the world of film and film culture, and I think they do a fantastic job at it.
Yeah, I think it's a. I enjoyed the first year I was there.
Yeah, it was a good time. All right, so we're going to do a transition now to our actual topic at hand. So, as I mentioned to you before, Ross, I usually write a lengthy little description. I used to watch a lot of Turner Classic Movies as a kid, and this is my chance to kind of have my Turner Classic Movies moment. So, on today's episode of the Shameless Picture Show, we're crossing a film off my personal shame list, Alfred Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief. This episode is brought to you by Paramount Pictures, who recently released a new 4K Steelbook 70th Anniversary Edition of this Hitchcock classic, and I will talk about a little bit later on in the episode about how it looks, how it sounds, and the special features. The French Riviera. Sunlight glints off the Mediterranean as tourists in sunglasses and linen suits stroll the promenades, drawn by the promise of elegance, wealth, and just a touch of danger. But beneath the glitz and glamour, a wave of high-profile jewelry thefts has left local authorities scrambling. The crimes bear the unmistakable style of John Roby, also known as the Cat, a notorious cat burglar now retired and quietly tending vineyards in the hills above the coast. When suspicion falls squarely on him, Roby is forced back into the shadows to clear his name. Armed with a list of wealthy tourists flaunting the area's most expensive jewels, he begins tailing a potential target, Francie, a clever and glamorous young American. Their flirtation sparks quickly, but when her jewels vanish, Francie turns on Roby, and the chase becomes personal. To Catch a Thief marked Alfred Hitchcock's first use of the VistaVision widescreen process and was his final film with Grace Kelly. It was also his penultimate collaboration with Cary Grant, whose character, like in North by Northwest, must prove his innocence while on the run. The film's visual elegance was enhanced by Edith Head's costumes, including Kelly's iconic gold lame gown, and stunning location photography along the French Riviera, coordinated by veteran production manager C.O. Doc Erickson. Though partially shot on Paramount sound stages, much of its sun-drenched atmosphere comes from on-location work at Cannes, Nice, and the Villa Franche-sur-Mer. Upon its release, To Catch a Thief drew mixed reactions. Many praised its charm and glamorous pairing of Grant and Kelly, while others noted a lack of suspense compared to Hitchcock's earlier thrillers. Critics like Bosley Crawford and Philip K. Scheuer celebrated its stylish tone and romantic wit, while The Guardian and The New Yorker dismissed it as light and forgettable. Writing with her trademark sharpness, Pauline Kael observed that the later jaded Alfred Hitchcock leans to malice in manner, calling the film no more than a pleasant minor diversion, but noting that Cary Grant's elegance, the sunny Riviera, and Grace Kelly, sexier than she is in anything else, carry it through. While some found the mystery lacking, the film's enduring appeal lies in its effortless sophistication and star power, a sentiment echoed in its 92% Rotten Tomatoes score. The film stars Cary Grant, Grace Kelly, Jesse Royce Landis, John Williams, and Bridget Aubert as Danielle Fassard. Its VistaVision cinematography was shot by Robert Burks, a frequent Hitchcock collaborator, with music by Lynn Murray and editing by George Tomasini. Written by John Michael Hayes, based on the novel by David Dodge, directed by Alfred Hitchcock from 1955. This is To Catch a Thief.
Grant and this year's Academy Award winner Grace Kelly, two exciting personalities who were made for each other. And now Alfred Hitchcock brings them into very close contact in this perfect tale of romantic intrigue, filmed on the beautiful French Riviera.
You have a very strong grip, the kind a burglar needs.
That's why you came out here, isn't it?
The scandalous romance that shocked even the blasé international set between this restless, thrill-hunting American heiress and the notorious man of mystery the French underworld called the Cat. For the game they played was not played for money, and the characters they played with played for keeps. No one but Hitchcock could create such relentless excitement, filling the screen with fireworks as he matches the blazing talents of these two great stars in the love affair of the year.
Look, John. Hold them. Diamonds. Have you ever had a better offer in your whole life? One with everything.
Come down, Robbie, or we shall be forced to shoot.
So, Ross, as I said in my intro, this is a first-time watch for me. I had never seen To Catch a Thief.
Oh, you haven't?
No, this was a first time for me, and it's one of those. The fun thing about a filmography like Alfred Hitchcock is he's got so much in it. I don't think it's quite as high as 100 films, but he has been working steadily since the silent era, all the way up until I think his last film was 1974. I want to say
76, 6, I believe, was the
Okay.
family plot. Yeah.
Okay, I was close. So the fun thing
70,
about
72 was Frenzy. So yeah, he at that age he wasn't making them every couple of years. Took a little longer.
yes, but the fun thing about his filmography is he's got so much, and he has so many distinct time periods. Like you could watch a Hitchcock film from different eras, and you don't quite know what you're gonna get. And that's one thing I've always found appealing about him. And this was one of those Hitchcock films that just kind of went under my radar for quite a while. Um, so, what's your history with this?
I saw this probably back in high school, which would be the early 80s. And Hitchcock to me was a director that I was very aware of
Mm-hmm.
before high school because the TV show.
Yeah.
When growing up in the 70s, the TV show was in reruns. So he was a well-known personality, and I think when you think of it too, today we have these celebrity directors, filmmakers like Tarantino, and you have a director like Nolan where everyone anticipates his next work. Hitchcock was that. You had John Ford, you had Howard Hawks, King Vidor, you had a whole bunch of great directors in classic Hollywood, but they weren't necessarily celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And Hitchcock, I don't know if that was intentional because he stuck himself in every film,
Mm-hmm.
or if it was part of branding. Because when you watch some of these old trailers, they always promote Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief.
Yeah.
And that was seldom seen, in the 50s. You didn't see John Ford's, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah.
It was Mr. Roberts.
Yeah. It was almost like he was able to market himself.
Yeah. And he was he was a personality that went on and did interviews on talk shows. So there's so much video footage of him from the 50s to his death that he was always in the spotlight. And in the 70s, his films, I don't know the difference between the copyright laws here in America and the UK, but all his post-America work, the talkies at least,
Mm-hmm.
were on PBS all the time. The 39 Steps, all the old stuff, The Lady Vanishes, Sabotage, Secret Agent. You could watch those anytime on PBS. So people knew who Hitchcock was in the 70s. And a lot of his 50s work wasn't shown anymore. But this is the exception of the 50s work. And the 50s, that was known as his greatest creative period.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And what happened was he had a deal with Paramount that after 8 years after the film's release, he owned that film. So they were kind of like reverted back to them and put on the shelf. And except for To Catch a Thief, that was the only Paramount film he never retained the rights to, and you saw that on TV.
Mm-hmm.
That was like one of the few 50s films that you could watch on TV. So it was played quite a bit, and I remember watching it as a kid.
So when you saw it at a young age, I assume you had seen other Hitchcock films up before that.
Yeah, I have. I mean, like Notorious always played on TV. Strangers on a Train was very well known at that time. Dial M for Murder,
Mm-hmm.
Suspicion was played a lot on TV. It was always on the Late Late Show. I'm older than you, so I come from a different era where a lot of this stuff was seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but his great '50s work wasn't brought back into the public until like the '80s, which created another Hitchcock revival, like Rear Window, the second Man Who Knew Too Much, all that stuff. Universal managed to buy and restored and started showing them in theaters and on TV again.
Do you remember your initial thoughts on To Catch a Thief?
I like the film. My opinion of it hasn't changed since I first watched it. I enjoyed it as a younger person, and I enjoy it now. I think the things that grabbed me because I was interested in photography is the on location shooting.
Oh yeah, the that is one of the things that really caught my attention when I watched this film. I was lucky enough my short film from the Darkness Theater played at the short film corner in Cannes. So I had gotten to, walk past the Hotel Carlton, and I had been at these locations, and it has not changed much. And I will always remember when I was there. There was a film teacher who was there with us, and in some very drunken piece of wisdom, he said, "If you can't be inspired looking at this, nothing's going to inspire you."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I kept thinking of as I was watching this. It's, who wouldn't want to make this movie?
Yeah.
And it feels very in line with some of Hitchcock's interests at the time when it came to films. I don't think he had done a film about a cat burglar necessarily, but he had shown interest in the world of crime. He had shown interest in the world of having the blame placed on you when you're not the one to blame. What I found interesting, and like I said, I've not seen all of Hitchcock's work, though I am, next year I have a goal to see more of it because of a book that I'm currently reading.
You
But
can borrow my box set.
I would love that. But I was actually surprised by how light this film was. I don't want to necessarily go so far as to say that it is a romantic comedy, but it definitely does. It has more of those romance elements than it does the suspense and the cat burglar elements to it.
Yeah, it's a very brightly lit film. It's filmed almost as a romantic comedy.
Yeah,
and I think his thought was maybe it's a romantic comedy with light suspense.
yeah,
because there are moments when there's deep shadows, and there's a weird use of the color green in the film for me.
I definitely want to talk about that. Yes,
he uses that as a night color.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if it's just the transfer on my Blu-ray or whatever, if it's any different in your 4K, but a lot of night scenes have a green filter over them, and I've always found that odd because most people would put a blue filter over it.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that one out myself. Because I have to say, one thing I've always appreciated about Hitchcock and his eye for visuals is once he delved into the world of color, he has some of the most brilliant color photography. Yeah. Vertigo, the use of color in Vertigo is unlike many other films I had seen from that time.
Yeah, and I just was reminded he used the color green in Vertigo for one night scene in there.
Yes. And I tried to do a little bit of research to kind of take a look to see if I could find any notes that might have been left from that time period, to see if there was any notes as to why he chose green. I also know Hitchcock had a very John Fordian way about talking about his work and his film. He didn't really like to I don't think Hitchcock, very much like John Ford, did not like being seen as an artist. Uh, it's not
I wonder how true that is, though, because he experimented a lot.
he did experiment a lot, but he also thought the act of actually shooting the film was the most arduous part.
Yeah.
There's on this disc there is a great little introduction by Leonard Maltin, who's probably my favorite film critic. And I've heard this story before, but he talks quite a bit about how Hitchcock loved pre-production. He loved putting the film together. He loved to get creative. He did so much work in pre-production. By the time he got to the movie, he was bored because he had done it all. He had seen the movie already.
Yeah.
Now he's just putting it together.
Well, he was a master craftsman who knew camera, who knew what each lens would do without even looking at a monitor. I watched a documentary on the making of Frenzy.
Yeah.
And he was working with a younger crew, and there was a scene where a woman was walking out of a building, and it was on location, and the cameraman wanted to, I think he stopped the cameraman who wanted to put a different lens on.
Yeah.
Wanted, I guess, a mid shot or whatever. And he just knew right away by the lens he grabbed, goes, no, that's not the lens I want. And he's not looking at a monitor. He just knows exactly what the lens would do to the image once it's, caught on film, where he knew exactly the framing of it.
Yeah.
And what it would look like because each lens, you could do a little wider, in closer. And he just knew that instinctively and didn't even have to look at a monitor.
No, and that's a skill for anyone out there listening who has not done photography, not done any sort of film, has not spent much time around it. That is a skill that not all filmmakers or photographers have. That was the whole reason the director's lens became a thing, so that way a director can view the shot through a specific lens and kind of create the look. I am openly admit that I'm not the best at just knowing the visual qualities and the focal length and the depth of lenses just off the top of my head. That is a very impressive skill.
And he also knew exactly what to shoot and not shoot anymore, because he didn't want the editor to change it in the editing room.
Yeah.
He just got what he needed. If you cut to a woman and it's a close up of her looking down at a plate of food, which he often had, he had a thing about food in films. He wanted a certain reaction shot, then he got that as a close up. It might not play into wide, but he made sure this is the one you're doing, and we're only shooting that close up.
Yes. There's an intention behind everything that he puts on the screen. There's no accidents when it comes to an Alfred Hitchcock production. At least not in his later, like maybe when he was really young and shooting silent films in England. But once he really started getting budgets and getting control, there were no accidents. Everything had its place, had its purpose. And going back to that really distinct color of green, whatever the reason that he chose that was going to be his color for nighttime, whether that's, the obvious thought of like, oh, it's supposed to represent greed or something like that. Like, there is a reason for it, even if he's not going to necessarily tell the audience, because I don't know, this might be a little bit of a diatribe, but Hitchcock was very particular about making sure that the audience knew what was going on at any particular time.
The fireworks scene.
Yeah.
I watched the film a couple days ago for this, and there's no mistake that those two had sex.
Yeah, that's my wife Amanda said the same thing.
Yeah, there's no mistake, and you wonder how that got past censors.
Yeah. Yeah, or another scene, um, their picnic scene where when they're eating that chicken, like the cuts of it, the types of chicken that they're eating, and the way that it's the way that they're eating it. There's even some sensuality to it.
And
Uh,
it's a wonder.
yeah, and all of this is intentional, or even like the way the movie begins with you see a cat walking across a roof, and then you see jewels being stolen, and it cuts back to the cat. Like the film, it holds your hand in a way, in a creative fashion,
Hmm.
which is not an easy thing to do. Like, to be subtle and also obvious at the same time.
Yeah, the that's one of the things that that cat walking across the rooftops is opening shot, and it's done so well because it introduces Cary Grant. It sets up his character
Mm-hmm.
without showing him.
Yeah.
Because the first time you see him is through a window with his back to the camera in the distance, with
Yep.
the cat in the foreground on the couch, and then you cut into him, and then all of a sudden there's a car coming up the road, and he looks concerned, and this is all done without dialogue.
Yeah.
Today's films would have dialogue for no reason over this stuff, where people are talking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the maid is there, but he's not talking to the maid, about
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen. He just goes up in his room and sets a shotgun aside, and then goes down and finally talks to the police.
Yeah, and the stuff that he's saying to the police is so inconsequential, and like, oh, let me go change into something, and there's no exposition really. And don't get me wrong, it's hard to there is some exposition within this film, but I think Hitchcock, having started in the world of silent film and having made so many before his first talkie, I think really helped his visual storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's one of the things. When I was developing my scripts early on, I was reading a lot about script construction, and I still follow those rules when I write something. Is that you define a character by his actions,
Mm-hmm.
not what they say. And so you're watching Cary Grant do something, and his character is being developed in those steps.
Absolutely. Like, and that's one of the things that I found so appealing about this film is, and kind of going what you're saying, I think about this in the same way. Where when I'm writing something is, sometimes my first draft will be like early drafts will be wordy, just because sometimes you just need to get your ideas out. But when I'm doing rewrites, I often try to think, is there a way to tell this scene with as few words as possible?
I
And
always think that.
yeah, and I also, same thing when I am shooting something. I try to think, it's like, how can I shoot this with as few shots as possible? How much of this can I shoot an establishing shot? Can I create an interesting enough establishing shot that I can get most of this action without having to do constant and frequent close-ups and shoot so much goddamn coverage? Because I can't speak for you, but I hate shooting coverage unless I need it.
I do shoot coverage, but the way I write scripts
Mm-hmm.
is I've edited it in my head already, so I know what it's going to look like. So I know where I'm going to place the camera when I get to the set. I do shoot coverage. Like, if we're shooting a scene and it's 3 or 4 people talking, I will get the coverage. But I also know right away I'm not going to use 75% of that.
Mm-hmm.
I just use it as, I get the coverage as safety.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And there's a lot of benefit in doing that. So, yeah, this is one of those films. It's not my favorite Hitchcock, but I did enjoy it. But there's something that I feel like in any one of his films that there's something you can learn from it. And like, I think it's such an interesting choice too, that you have this film, you set it up, you have the Cary Grant character, and it's got such a beautiful setup. I love the setup behind this, where there is, you have this cat burglar who is mimicking the trademarks of our lead character, and throughout the entire movie, we don't even know for sure if he's not the one doing it. We have his word on it, but we actually never see who's doing it. And I love this setup. I need to use all of my cat burglar skills to try to catch this burglar. And it's got this fantastic setup, and I think it's such an interesting choice. We are quite a ways in this film before Grace Kelly's even introduced.
Yeah. It's at least a half hour.
Oh yeah.
And when the way she's introduced is done in an offhanded way.
Yeah, like she. If you didn't know who Grace Kelly was, you wouldn't assume that she would become the second lead.
Yeah, and what's interesting structurally about the script is there are a number of detectives in this film.
Yeah.
Cary Grant is being a detective trying to find out who's framing him. Grace Kelly is being a detective trying to find out who he really is.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance man is being a detective.
I love the insurance
he
man.
needs to solve the case, but he's not that good of a detective because he needs Cary Grant.
Yeah.
And then there's the police that are sure it's Cary Grant. So they're basically detectives too. They're just trying to find the evidence to really make sure it's him.
Mm-hmm. No, I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right that you have all these converging storylines, and the critics, I think, were a little harsh on the film, saying that there's not as much suspense as some of Hitchcock's earlier thrillers. But I don't necessarily feel like this movie was devised to be a thriller. But I think there is this wonderful sense of urgency throughout the film, because you have all these moments where Cary Grant can't be in one place for too long before the bad guys, quote unquote, start to set in. Near the beginning of the film, when he's at that restaurant with his former, one of his former, I don't want to say coworkers, but accomplices. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's only there for a little bit of time before people start closing in, and then you have that great boat sequence, and then he gets to Cannes, and he has to try to blend in and hide, and he can't stay anywhere for too long. So you have this great momentum keeping you going, and and it's even great when Grace Kelly is introduced, and she's helping him with it, and you have her crazy driving through the mountains of France, and like every time that this film might get quote unquote boring, not that I would necessarily use those words, it does something to reinvigorate the audience.
Yeah. I mean, if it's not the chase scenes, if it's not just the cinematography, it's the production design.
Yeah.
And it's the costuming. I mean, the last act is pretty much a giant showreel for Edith Head.
Oh my God, yes.
It's a fashion show for her work.
Yeah, and it's pretty incredible. Like that sequence, that costume party sequence, almost feels like a dream. And that's also another thing I like too about Hitchcock's work is he's not afraid to pull you out of reality and tease you with surreality.
Yeah. I mean, there's the VistaVision photography. I mean, it was probably the IMAX of its day.
Mm-hmm.
because of how much of the frame it was using and how big it was.
Yeah.
And so you had a finer grain.
Yep.
And you could do those deep focus shots and it would look great.
Yeah.
The you have the Burks' cinematography, you have Edith Head. I think a lot of the effect shots still kind of hold up today. There's a few in there that have a hard black line around things,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't take you out of the picture. I
No.
mean, the Grace Kelly driving is rear production.
Yeah.
And the background behind her looks just as good as the foreground of her driving.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And for those of you listening who are not familiar with what VistaVision is, it kind of became, this last year became kind of a buzzword again because of the film The Brutalist, shot in VistaVision. But when VistaVision came to be, I believe White Christmas was the first film to shoot in VistaVision. Paramount was not using CinemaScope. And CinemaScope, which was a extremely wide format process that used anamorphic lenses, where they would essentially shoot a squished image and then project it back through an anamorphic lens, and it would give you those really wide 2.39 to 1 aspect images, and they started doing that to compete with television. The problem, though, with something like CinemaScope, is that not all theaters had that capability, and it was expensive to shoot on. It was expensive to project, and
sometimes you lost seats because you had to take seats out to widen the screen.
Exactly, and Paramount just didn't deal with it. So they invented something called VistaVision, which, while not as widescreen as something like CinemaScope, was still widescreen at 1.85 to 1. And what's interesting is it goes, instead of the film going through the camera vertically, it went through horizontally. So you got a much larger surface area that you could shoot on. As Ross said, it was pretty much the IMAX of its time, and had a very light grain structure, so it was fantastic for effect shots. Even later on in the 70s and 80s, they were still using VistaVision for effect shots, because when you used to shoot effects, you'd have to combine layers of film, and it is a heavier grain, so it was great for that. And
yeah, being someone who's a photographer too, the large format cameras hold up a lot better than a 35 millimeter camera when you're trying to capture an image.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with the CinemaScope, like you said, they were shot with 35 millimeter cameras. They just use a different lens to squeeze it. So when you're blowing it up, sometimes you would watch one of those early 50s CinemaScope films and they looks a little soft on the edges,
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not as clean in the middle.
Yeah.
They're just shooting wide because they need to shoot wide to compete for TV. And a lot of those early CinemaScope films, they couldn't even really do close-ups.
No, it was tough. So like VistaVision was a format that Alfred Hitchcock really liked because it had more pluses than it had negatives, and on top of that, you didn't need any special equipment to show it at a theater. Mm-hmm. So Hitchcock shot quite a few films in VistaVision in his time, and it's a format that I've always really liked. And with the advent of Blu-ray and now even higher formats than Blu-ray, you can really see what that format has to offer, because the images on it are honestly stunning. And yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of shine a light on how cool I think VistaVision is.
It's a shame he started this film with VistaVision, because Rear Window would have looked amazing in VistaVision. That set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And like Rear Window is probably still my favorite of Hitchcock's films.
Yeah.
So I would be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking further about, like, while all the performances in this movie are great, you can't deny Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. And it's almost a shame that Grace Kelly retired as young as she did. Uh,
Well, she got married shortly after this,
y-
but Hitchcock kept trying to lure her back. He wanted her in The Man Who Knew Too Much.
yeah. She actually married a Moroccan prince from Morocco and became, like, I don't know what the official title is when you marry into royalty, but she's essentially royalty.
Yeah, I think not only that, I think he wanted her back for Marnie too. I think that was the other film he tried to get her back, but no, not at
hmm
that time.
And it's interesting too to if you kind of think about the films that Hitchcock made later. It's been said by Hitchcock historians that Grace Kelly leaving the world of acting definitely had a profound effect on her, because she was one of his favorite collaborators. And if you kind of look at the themes of Vertigo, about this person wanting to hold on to this person and make someone else in the image of someone else.
Yeah, that's what he was doing with his leading ladies
Yeah.
after that.
He was trying to make them into Grace Kelly.
Yeah, I mean it's the end of the '50s. When he went fully over to Universal and did the Birds and Marnie and Torn Curtain and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate those films. I don't think they're as good as his Paramount period,
Mm-hmm.
because during his Paramount period, he was still working with his favorite people: Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, Grace Kelly. Once after Psycho, probably his last really good film, he didn't have those people anymore. Cary Grant retired. Jimmy
Yep.
Stewart was getting too old for those parts, and Grace Kelly went off and got married.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was kind of, I guess you could say he was kind of he was kind of lost a little bit within his career, because he experimented with other leading men, working with some big names of their times. Like he eventually worked with, Henry Fonda, and he did work with Paul Newman, who I love, though I don't love him in Torn Curtain. Um,
Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern, which I love Bruce Dern. But it just never felt like he could find his rhythm with his actors again.
Yeah, they're not awful films.
Oh no.
They're just not my favorite Hitchcock films.
Yeah. Yeah, and from what I read when I was researching this film, that Cary Grant had stepped away from acting a little bit before he came back to do this movie. He hadn't necessarily retired, but he hadn't made a movie since 1953, so he took a couple years off. When he was, there was a period of time where he was in a movie. He was in a couple movies every single year. So when you go from doing 2 to 3 a year to taking 2 to 3 years off, that's quite a time in Hollywood.
Well, at this time, Hitchcock was doing 2 films a year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one came out the same year as Rear Window, if I'm not mistaken, and then, or is it The Trouble with Harry?
Trouble with Harry. Rear Window came out the year before.
Yeah, so he was doing 2 films a year, and he had to finish up his Warner Brother contract, and did The Wrong Man over there with Henry Fonda.
Mm-hmm.
But he was moving ahead creatively, whether Cary Grant wanted to do films anymore. I mean, after 1960, his output was very slim. He knew he was getting too old to be playing a romantic lead against these 20-year-old women or 30-year-old women.
Yeah. Definitely, and I feel like James Stewart kind of had a similar thing as well, because I believe Vertigo was his last film with Stewart, and North
Yeah.
by Northwest was his last film with Grant.
Yeah.
But like I said, they're both Grace Kelly and Cary Grant are fantastic in this movie. I sometimes forget how much I like Grace Kelly, and I definitely find myself unfairly comparing all of Hitchcock's other blondes to her. I know, I know a lot of people really love Kim Novak, and I think she's great, but she's no Grace Kelly.
Yeah. He's had other leading ladies like
Yeah.
Ingmar Bergman.
Yep.
She's great in Notorious and Spellbound.
Mm-hmm.
He did a number of films for her, but her scandal kind of forced her away from Hollywood a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I said, this was such an interesting film because it was, as I said before, it was one that I hadn't seen before. And I mentioned earlier that next year I want to start making my way through some of his filmography that I had missed. There's a fantastic book. I don't know if you've heard of it, Ross. It's called A Year of Hitchcock.
Oh no,
And
I haven't seen that.
and
No.
this is written by film historians Jim McDevitt and Eric San Juan, and it is they have Hitchcock's 52 of his most prolific films, broken up in a week by week basis with little reviews and then interesting tidbits and factoids and kind of reminds you of some of Leonard Maltin's books where they actually it's outdated at this point, but they talk about some of the DVD releases that these films have had. And I actually want to each week knock off these films in order and just kind of catch up on the things I haven't seen and revisit the stuff that I have, and kind of track his career. Obviously, it's not all of them because it's only 52 of them, but it's a good chunk of them.
That's kind of what I'm doing right now. Before this film, I was watching all his 30s stuff first. I wasn't watching necessarily in order, but around the order. And then moving on to the 40s and 50s, I'm just, this one's just going to be out of order because I would have got down to it a little later.
So I think this is a great place to just kind of, since you've been working through some of his career before we start wrapping up, you talking about going through his filmography, like, have you seen all of his films?
I've probably seen about 90% of them.
Okay. What are some of your favorites?
I love 39 Steps. I loved it since I was a kid. I mean, that's one of the first videotapes I owned because Good Time Video, the cheap VHS.
I have some of their titles.
You could get it on Good Time Videos for like what, $2 or $3 back then.
Yeah.
I had all his British talkies on Good Time Videos, I think. Suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
I like Suspicion a lot. Notorious. I mean, I like Rebecca, but I don't love Rebecca.
Okay.
I find it a bit stuffy for my taste. Strangers on a Train.
Stranger on a Train is great. That was that. I had seen Hitchcock films obviously before Strangers on a Train, but Strangers on a Train is the one that really helped recontextualize. Because like growing up, I knew Psycho, I knew The Birds, I think I'd seen North by Northwest, but Strangers on a Train was the film that made me like, oh, I need to go see more of this guy's stuff.
Have you seen the film Danny DeVito made, Throw Mama from the Train?
Yes, I had seen that one right around the same time.
Great homage to that film.
No, I love that movie. I think it's really funny.
I love North by Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
Psycho, of course.
Yep.
I still think Psycho's his last great film. Frenzy's good, but it's not Psycho.
Yeah. One of my favorites, not one of his big films, not, like at least not in the, it's not talked about the way that say Rear Window or Vertigo is talked about. I really like Lifeboat.
Yeah, Tina
Lifeboat.
Lawrence did a very good Blu-ray on that.
Yeah, Lifeboat is a fantastic little bottle film about essentially these survivors of a freighter that was sunk by like a Nazi submarine, all being stuck on a lifeboat with each other, and they believe one of them to be a Nazi spy, and they're trying to figure out who it is while they're stuck on the ocean, and shot on backlots at the time. I believe that was one of his Fox films, so it was shot on the 20th Century Fox backlots, but it is a tight little thriller.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's his only Fox film.
Yeah.
Because he came to America, worked with Selznick, but then Selznick loaned him out quite a bit because he had disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
He did a few films for RKO, Suspicion, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He did a couple films for Universal, I believe, and Lifeboat was the one film he did for Fox. I think he worked with every major studio from the 40s and 50s.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one I really like. I would say, though, if Dial M for Murder is also one that I really like. Every time I see it, I just appreciate it more than I did the last time.
John Williams is really good in that one.
Yes, he is. Too. Yeah, he's great. John Williams, not the composer John Williams, but the British actor John Williams, plays in To Catch a Thief. He plays the insurance adjuster, and I think he's a hoot. He's great in every scene. He knows what character he's playing, and he plays it very well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to pick like my favorite out of the Hitchcock films, I would have to say it's Rear Window. That film
it's
just
one of my favorites too.
That one just floored me when I first saw it.
The thing about Hitchcock, he's such a craftsman, and that a lot of filmmakers today just don't take the extra steps that he would do back then. Mm-hmm. If he's doing a point of view shot, he made sure that where the person was looking at matched
mm-hmm.
the point of view shot. Because a lot of times when you see someone doing a point of view shot, it seems they're just getting B-roll footage, and there's the point of view, and he went out of the way to make sure everything matched where the eye lines were looking and all that stuff.
Yeah, he made sure that the camera lens was actually the right height of the actor and everything.
Yeah.
Because he knew those little things mattered. And yeah, like I said,
when he did those shots where they're point of view of maybe looking at a note or a key or whatever, they create an impact because he builds towards that, so the point of view shot has to matter.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Or even like something that I think a film that is getting more love recently than it did for a while, but his film Rope, compared to what we can do now with technology, it doesn't hold up as well in terms of because Rope, for those of you who haven't seen it, is a film that is meant to look like one continuous shot. It's a lot more obvious where he's hiding the cuts, but it's still really impressive for 1948.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite aspects about that film is that it all takes place in a New York City apartment, and it's going through the span of a night, and the background is changing, and he has this really interesting background made out of spun glass that is slowly changing as the film changes, and is changing the time of day.
Yeah.
And
it's one of his experimental films where he's just trying out new ideas.
Absolutely. And I think another film that has a really phenomenal use of the color green. He's really interested in the color green. I might have to explore that a little bit.
It's interesting that oneers are almost taken for granted now because it seems like everyone's trying to do a oneer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it loses its impact now because it's so easy to kind of do these things with a little editing and a little CGI trickery to make it seem like everything's one shot now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a shame that things like that where you worked really, really hard at doing are taken for granted now in filmmaking because from John Wick to the studio, everyone's like, well, I'm going to do a oneer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a shame a little bit.
Yeah, and not to sound like an old fogey who's like, well, movies used to be better. I feel like there is and I'm sure you probably see a lot of this with how many films that you watch, not only big productions, but because I have to say, Ross, I appreciate how you watch a lot of classics, but you still keep up with what's new, and you watch a lot of indie films. You see a little bit of everything. I feel I've had this feeling for a while that there's the idea of something being cool is outshadowing intention.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because when I see something like John Wick and where they're doing like 5 of them,
yeah,
one where every action scene is a oneer, I lose interest.
mm-hmm.
Where's the reaction shot of the protagonist reacting to almost being hit or getting hit, or the antagonist to help bump up the pace?
Yeah.
Or juice the scene. You don't get that anymore.
Yeah.
With this film, when Cary Grant walks out on the French Riviera, that's really the French Riviera. Nowadays, you would shoot in Georgia and green screen it in.
Yeah, they would.
I mean, Black Panther was shot in Georgia, not Africa.
That's true. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And like I'll talk to friends all the time who are involved in film production, and I was straight up like, I'll ask, it's like, why did you include this shot? And they're like, well, it looked cool. I'm like, and don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for this is just a cool thing, let's do it. But I feel like we are more inundated than ever with media surrounding us. You have more things available at your fingertips than ever before. But I think there's an extreme lack of media literacy, because you can see so much stuff so quickly and so often. There's not a lot of time spent thinking about why things are done a certain way, why things are presented to us in a certain way. And if it's not people can't easily figure it out, a lot of times they'll rebel against it, like, oh, I didn't get it. Because we're not thinking about things the way we used to. When To Catch a Thief came out, there were much fewer films coming out in a year. And you had opportunities to, if you wanted to go see a movie, but you've seen everything that's out in theaters, well, you'll go rewatch To Catch a Thief, or you'll rewatch whatever, and you'll spend some more time with it. You'll think about it. You'll let it kind of overtake you.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly didn't have all the streamers back then. You didn't have the internet back then.
Mm-hmm. You didn't have home video back then.
Yeah, you didn't. You had. People could buy 16 millimeter copies of films back then if they had the money, but not a lot of people would invest in that. That was really the hardcore cinephiles. But there was TV, but what were there, 3 or 4 channels?
Yeah, and so not many.
You had a lot less things trying to gain your attention. There was radio. Radio was still popular, but if I missed a radio program, I'd just listen to it the next day.
Yeah, that's true. So, Ross, before we start wrapping up here, was there anything else you wanted to say about To Catch a Thief before we move on to our Thrill House moment?
No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, it is a good film.
It is a good film.
I think people who haven't seen it and are listening to it, I think you would enjoy it. It's not one of my favorite Hitchcocks, but it's still a very well made and very good film.
Yeah, like honestly, Hitchcock's worst films are still better than some filmmakers' best films.
Yeah.
So I'm in complete agreement with that. So as I mentioned to you, Ross, there's a thing that we do on this show called the Thrill House moment. It is a reference to a obscure Simpsons quote that I just really enjoy, where we talk about kind of your lock-in moment, the moment that really sold you on this film. It doesn't have to, or even just a favorite scene, something that you want to highlight. Do you have a favorite scene or a lock-in moment that kind of made you sit up in your chair?
I think the first, I'm not sure how long the sequence is, but the first 15, 20 minutes of the film is really good. That hooks you. Hitchcock had a way of hooking people with the first scenes.
Yeah.
And, you not only do you get great location shooting, it's well crafted in the introduction of characters. And the use of color. Back then, you kind of forget how colorful the 50s were with the cars, and the bus is red and yellow. It's a much more colorful world back then. Everything now is black, grays, metallic blues, and whites for cars.
Yeah, maybe you'll get a red if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So when you say the first 15 minutes, is that like all the way through the introduction of Cary Grant's character, where he's like escaping the house and all of that?
I would say up to when he gets to the French Riviera and goes into the kitchen.
Okay, yeah.
Even the small details, like you don't know what those people are saying in the kitchen, but you know they got a problem with them, so you're trying to figure out what the deal is.
Yeah, when they throw the egg at him, and yeah, that would have been my answer, but I always if my guest chooses the same answer, I always try to come up with a second one. If that is my Thrill House moment, that locked me in so well, but I would say even those next 15 minutes of him at the kitchen, escaping the kitchen, getting onto that boat and getting his way to Cannes is also absolutely fantastic.
And the sets in that kitchen really do feel like a French restaurant on the Riviera.
Yeah, I like if someone would have told me that they shot that in a location in a real French restaurant, I'd believe them because it feels authentic. Yeah. Absolutely love it. And then real quick, just before we wrap up, I do want to just talk about this new release that Paramount Pictures put out of To Catch a Thief. They did a new Steelbook 4K edition for the 70th anniversary. And in terms of special features, it's got pretty much everything that had come on the other. I think there was a 2006 and a 2012 Blu-ray for this movie. So it's got a commentary by Dr. Drew Casper, who is a Hitchcock film historian. It's got a introduction for the film by Leonard Maltin. I think that one might be new.
That's new. Yeah, I have the 2012 Blu-ray.
Yeah, so that one is new. They have A Night with the Hitchcocks, which is actually Hitchcock's daughter and granddaughter talking about him. They have a featurette on here about censorship in Hollywood and making films under the code. And then making of stuff and just behind the scenes about Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. So there's some really good stuff on here. There's also a featurette on here about Edith Head working for Paramount. So if you're a fan of film history, the special features are great. I do want to talk a little bit about picture quality and audio quality. This film, you can't put this film onto any format and not have it look great. That being said, because of how great this film does look and the way the colors pop, there's even though VistaVision has a very light grain structure, when there is a lack of grain, more than likely due to digital noise reduction, it is very evident. You can usually see it in transitionary sequences when they used to, for those of you listening, when they used to do fade in and fade out, they would layer the film, and a lot of times it could get even grainier. I think whoever was headlining this restoration went a little heavy on some of their digital noise reduction on some on some shots, and it's, I think, very obvious. But it doesn't pull away from how good this film looks. I'm just nitpicking because that is what I do. As for a soundtrack, I believe this film, when it was released in mono based on the time period. There were some stereo tracks, but it was pretty rare. Unfortunately, this film does not have the original theatrical mono track. It's got a Dolby True HD 5.1 track, but it sounds really good, and it's very front heavy, so I could tell they used the original mono track when they made this, but because it is surround, it's not necessarily easy to extract sounds from a mono track. There are some new sound effects added, and you can usually tell where they come in, but that's not to say that it sounds poor in any way. I just wish we would have had the option to have the original theatrical mono track, if I'm being a purist, which I am. But if you do not currently own To Catch a Thief, this is a fantastic release. Paramount put it out one time before on their Paramount. They put it out one time before in 4K on their Paramount Presents line, but the new cover artwork, which is inspired off of the theatrical poster, is phenomenal. So I'd say pick up this version. So thank you very much, Ross, for listening to me talk and hanging out with me and talking about Hitchcock. Before I let you go, where can people find more information about the Milwaukee Short Film Festival?
I would say follow our socials at the moment. Our Instagram account, our Facebook account, Blue Sky. Tickets will be on sale soon, and we'll be directing people where to get tickets on those accounts. The website should be up soon, so I don't want to give the address to that website because people might go there now and not find anything. We're waiting for the tech people to connect the domain name.
Well, the best place to keep up, as he says, is on the socials. I can tell you, because I have it pulled up in front of me, that you can find them on Instagram at MKE Short Fest. And then you could also find information about the Milwaukee Illuminate Film Festival at MKE_MIFF. And then from there, you should be able to find all their other socials. And I always really liked, Ross, that you put up little videos, and you really make a big deal out of showcasing which films are playing. And I appreciate that you put up videos and pictures, and you do all this great stuff to make the filmmakers feel as important as they should. So that's always fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, guys. At this point, you should know where to find me. I'm Michael_Viers on pretty much every form of social media. You can also find me at Shameless Picture Show pretty much everywhere. You can find me on TikTok, where I talk about aspect ratios more than anyone else on that platform. And make sure you tune in next time. Shame Time, Shame Place, Shameless Picture Show.
The Shameless Picture Show is a proud member of the Cinepunch Podcast Network. The show is recorded in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and is hosted and produced by Michael Viers. The show is created by Michael Viers and Nick Richards. The Shameless Picture Show is edited by Austin Proctor of the Frightmares podcast. Amanda Viers is the show's graphic designer and a big help behind the scenes. Our theme music was composed by Austin Proctor with narration by Nick Richards. The end credit music you're currently enjoying was generously provided to us by the band 10 Speed. And an extra special thank you to all our Patreon supporters and to our generous sponsors. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and directly at Cinepunch.com.